Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the show, we've got Susan Crabtree joining us from Real Clear Politics. She's got updates for us on all of the scandals going on inside the Secret Service. Also joining us today, David Strom from Hot Air. That's at 5 o'clock. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. All right, so we are awaiting more details from Hunter Biden's courtroom appearance today. It's supposed to be jury selection. He walked into the courtroom today with a surprise announcement that he was pursuing a type of plea called an Alford plea, where he'd allow the conviction to go through while maintaining his innocence. It appears that was rejected in that courtroom today. And now the update on this is, CNN says that he's offering now to flatly plead guilty to all 9 tax offenses that he faces in the court. I'm seeing an early indication right now from Jennifer Van Laar. She is a writer for Red State, a managing editor, investigative journalist for Red State, and she's been reporting from the courtroom today. And she said here she said at 3:50, just minutes ago, 17 minutes ago, that Hunter Biden has now pled guilty in that Los Angeles courtroom Thursday afternoon to all of the charges brought against him in a federal indictment related to failure to pay income taxes and tax evasion from between 2016 and 2019. Remember, prior to 2016, a lot of this had disappeared because the statute of limitations ran out. The feds allowed the statutes to run so that they couldn't charge him with anything from those pivotal periods where he's taking money from foreign interests. Continuing here from Jennifer, in accepting the plea, U.S. District Court Judge Mark Scarzi told Biden he faces a maximum punishment of 15 years in prison and a fine of between $500,000 and $1 million. Sentencing will be held at a later date after court officials, prosecutors, and the defense team present their recommendations to the court. At the request of Scarzi, the judge, Assistant U.S. Attorney Leo Wise is currently reading the entire indictment as a factual basis for the plea. So that's what, again, a Red State managing editor, Jennifer Van Laar, is sharing. She's doing this. She's been reporting from the courthouse today in L.A., and I imagine a bunch of news outlets are following suit as we speak. But like I said, CNN is indicating here that Hunter Biden has made this offer to plead guilty now to those 9 tax offenses flatly, so that the court is going to say, you're guilty, and then Hunter's going to have to agree, I'm guilty, and once again, Hunter's done nothing wrong. According to Joe Biden, of course, this still very much leaves on the table the likeliness that Joe is going to give this man a pardon before he gets out of Dodge. So we have that to look forward to. We got some calls coming in. Russ is in Woodbridge on line 1. Russ, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have one question. I'm an amateur to admit the truth, but when I heard that the Secret Service was told that the building that the president was shot from was unsafe to have people, based on there, I wondered why we didn't have an armed guard in every stairwell of that building and a remote camera up there, since it's cheaper than a drone or a helicopter. Mm-hmm. My way of thinking immediately when I was told that one of the best vantage points for an assailant to be in was inaccessible, that's what I would have done. And right. I haven't heard that question asked by anybody.
Well, let me talk about what we know about that building. This is the AGR building. There's another building that sits right next to it that has a window that directly looks over the very roof you're talking about. So if there were a Secret Service agent or a cop standing there, they would have seen Thomas Crooks on the roof of that building. Additionally, you mentioned stairwells. Thomas Crooks, it's believed, didn't even go up any sort of interior stairwell. He climbed up an air conditioning unit on the outside of the building and up onto the roof. It was apparently very easily accessible. Didn't even need a ladder to get up there. He got up there, and still to this day, questions remain about how did he get the gun up there? Where was it bunged? These sorts of things.
Right.
But we are, as you point out, Russ, woefully short on answers on how the president of the United States got shot in the head from the most obvious possible vantage point you could imagine.
Right. And also the fact that if drones and helicopters were too expensive, a simple remote operated camera placed on the roof would have tipped them off immediately when a man accessed the roof.
I know. Russ, it's like you and I could better protect our house than the Secret Service managed to not protect Donald Trump. I agree
with you 100%. I'm a member of a club in Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Loaded up with law enforcement people and politicians. In fact, Antonin Scalia was one of our members when he passed.
Wow.
These guys could have done a better job protecting the president.
Yeah. You know what we should do? We should call for local Boy Scout units to handle the security detail from now on, because they'll
I see no reason in the world why not have volunteers help with school security, politician security, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
When you've got people that have been investigated by the FBI up, down, and sideways, and they're qualified to do this type of work. A lot of them are current law enforcement and military, and it's a waste. They're there and they're willing to serve, but they are not being asked.
I know. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because the default posture of our government, and that especially as it's led by Democrats, is not to trust the populace. That there's something weak about the populace, something scary about the populace. They shouldn't have guns. They shouldn't be involved in protecting anyone. Only government agents should do that. That's the impulse. And Russ, I love the suggestion, because what it does is it regrounds the truth, which is this is a country for and by its citizens. And citizens, the ones who care about their kids and care about their communities, are in many ways best equipped to actually protect it.
In fact, the police chief of Prince William County, when asked about this, thought it was a great idea to have school bus monitors and cars following school buses and the whole 9 yards. He said it was a great idea. It's free, doesn't cost the county anything, and you've got very qualified, dedicated people that would be willing to do that.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And every time I see one of those stories about sheriffs all across the country who get sick of all this garbage, and they go, you know what? I'm going to deputize every citizen I possibly can, just so they can be there to help protect this community. I love those guys, and I raise a glass to them. Russ,
actually, one of those police chiefs went ahead and deputized everybody in the county.
Yeah,
which kind of crazy, but when you think about it, I mean, why not?
Yeah, amen. And meanwhile, Kamala wants to disarm you. Kamala wants to take your gun away. And not only does she want to take your gun away, she wants to take away the government officials to protect the kids inside of the schools. So yesterday, that shooting in Georgia was stopped by school resource officers, armed school resource officers. In other words, good guys with guns who were present to bring that carnage to an end. Thanks to them, that ended. Kamala Harris announced as recently as 2019, that can't happen. She does not want any armed officers inside of the school. She wants to leave those kids as sitting ducks, and it's totally contemptible.
Right, like that shooting in Florida with all those kids.
Yes, in Broward County,
it could easily have been mitigated, at least if not stopped. It could have been,
Yeah, and in that case, there was a good guy with a gun, but he couldn't work up the courage to go into the building, which was awful.
Right.
It was just awful. Russ, thank you. I appreciate the call, sir. A lot of good points. Russ has a lot of faith in his fellow man, which is good. It's a good country, and Russ definitely has that view. Nick is in Purcellville now, calling in line 2. Nick, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, Vince. One story that kind of sailed away and dropped off the edge of the earth is the Secret Service story of the agent that left her post to breastfeed her child.
Right.
Well, I'd like to know what happened there. And when I first heard about the story, I listened to a local broadcast of a TV broadcast on YouTube, and they said the child was 2 years old.
Did they? That's a detail I didn't hear.
Yeah, and it kind of dropped off. I can't find it anywhere now. But when you look at all the stories, all the reports on this, it doesn't say infant, it doesn't say baby, it says child.
Well, I don't even know what to make of that. I will say, regardless of the age of a kid, I mean, as you describe it, it's like, okay, now this is getting weird. But here's the thing: regardless of the age, if you have a breastfeeding agent, you shouldn't have a situation where they're on a security detail for anybody. But figure it out. You've got to find some other thing for them to do for the duration that they've got to do that. I get it. But it even goes back to like the basics of like, how do you protect someone who is 6 foot? What is Trump? 6'4"? Trump's like mid 6 feet, something, six something. And you get a woman in there in front of him who everybody's been singing her praises. When he was shot, she was right up there. She put her life on the line. I have no question about that whatsoever. Her bravery is evident as she stands up there to try and block him. But she's still a full foot shorter than him, just as a tactical preparatory matter. What are we doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever, does it?
No, and first when I first heard that story, I pictured this Secret Service agent, female, with this like papoose on her breast, and then maybe a bulletproof over top of that. I mean, how's that work?
Who knows? Thank you, Nick. Nick's thinking it through. Nick's trying to figure out the contours of this. Appreciate that, Nick. Oh man. All right, let's now go to Dennis, who's calling in from Waldorf on line 1. Hello, Dennis. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, and I haven't heard it anywhere else. I think it was like last week I was listening to the morning show on the Patriot, and there was a guy talking about, how everybody always talks about Kamala and her word salads and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was saying that when she's saying the be unburdened by, what's been or whatever that comment is.
Yeah, it's the phrase is, sometimes I get confused as I try to remember it, but the phrase is what can be, and then she does an arm gesture. She flings it out to the right, unburdened by what has been.
Yeah, but that's actually in the Communist Manifesto and been used by like mild, in versions of it, maybe not exactly word for word, but, very close similarities to it by China back in Mao when they took over, in Russia and other places.
Yeah.
And so the guy was his take on it was, while we say it's word salad, she may actually be, knowing what she's saying and actually being meaning to say that.
Right, and her father is a Marxist. Kamala came up with a Marxist economist father, is what they say. But is there by any chance the guy whose voice you heard say that was Eric Weinstein, the professor? Do you remember if you heard that?
It could be. I heard it on the morning show.
Let me play it for you. Let me play. This is Eric Weinstein. He was on a podcast this past week with a guy called Chris Williamson, and the two of them were discussing this very thing. I'm so glad you brought it up, Dennis.
What can be unburdened by what has been? What does that mean?
He's pausing to think about it. What do you want?
I don't know if I should say. There's a line in Marx where sometimes you hear certain phrases like a world to win. AOC uses the phrase, we have a world to win, which comes from the end of the Communist Manifesto, originally written in German. It was the name. I used to hang out in the Revolutionary Bookstore in Cambridge, Massachusetts with the communists because they print everything in every language. So if you're trying to learn multiple languages, they'll print the same text in all of these languages and you can compare. It basically says you have to wipe out what has been to arrive in the new.
And where's it from? What can be unburdened by what has been?
It's not a direct translation, but it occurs in Karl Marx. Now, I wasn't expecting this. I could find you the exact reference. If you think about what Mao had to do to wipe out Chinese history, what Pol Pot had to do, you're trying to wipe out memory because the memory has all of this burden. Why is it important to go after doctors and lawyers and teachers and professors? Because in some sense, they are going to resist the new order that you're about to impose. You're looking for a blank slate.
So like
because they're the keepers of the old order, and this is the typical. Each of these communist revolutions, it always consists of that effort to destroy the old and to bring about the new. It's an excellent point. I appreciate Dennis's call. Right now, it's all right. So Biden is still allowed out from time to time. But you can tell why they try not to have this happen too frequently. Joe Biden just said a few moments ago that the Inflation Reduction Act is not correctly named. He says we should have named it what it was actually about. Now, by now, you know it's like some version of the Green New Deal. It was all a big green energy crony package. It wasn't actually about reducing inflation. Have you noticed prices coming down at all? No, because that didn't happen. Here's Joe Biden just moments ago standing in front of solar panels.
My investments, through my investments, the most significant climate change law ever. And by the way, it is a $369 billion bill. It's called the, we should have named it what it was, but at any rate.
We should have named it what it was. Well, if you had done that, maybe it wouldn't have passed. The lying was the way to get it through. The Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, no. Coming up, Susan Crabtree will be with us. She tells the truth. She's been digging it up, in fact, from the Secret Service. The latest on how they're spending your money. As presidents get shot in the head, why are Secret Service agents going to Disney World? Well, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, David Strom will be with us, associate editor over at Hot Air. We'll talk to him about how Russia's interfering in the election again. As Vladimir Putin endorses Kamala Harris today. Hilarious. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What's going on in the United States Secret Service? Are they capable of protecting presidents of the United States? For more on this, I want to go to the reporter who's been digging in on the subject for a long time, Susan Crabtree. She's a Real Clear Politics White House and national political correspondent, and she joins us now. Hello, Susan. Great to have you back, as always.
Yo, thanks for having me, Vince.
So one of the things I know, courtesy of your reporting, is that the Secret Service is pretty overworked right now, aren't they?
Absolutely. They are so struggling. So many of the special agents and uniform division officers are working so hard, many times 7 days a week without breaks, that they have reached their supermax overtime limit. So basically, I've been told that they're working for free now, essentially. I mean, they have their base pay, but they're not getting compensated for all of the overtime that they're forced to do. And this is contributing to terrible morale and has been for years, but especially during this peak campaign season. And with the United Nations General Assembly meetings planned for New York City later this month, and there's a 650 special agent shortage for that event alone.
And what is the shortage attributable to? Is it that their budget is maxed out on agents, or is it a matter of they just don't actually have enough agents working for the agency?
They don't have enough agents working for the agency for all of their protectees. There are now over 30 people that they are needed. They have the responsibility to protect, according to the executive orders that President Biden puts out. The president controls who is protected and who isn't. It's
right.
Not the Secret Service. They don't make that judgment. So yeah, it includes, obviously now all of a sudden Donald Trump, after the assassination attempt, is getting the full package of security assets, and I can go into some very interesting information that Senator Chuck Grassley just put out about the Iranian threat against Donald Trump.
And I want to know. I want to know a lot about that. Just on this one last piece on kind of how they're staffing up the protection of these guys. So when the Secret Service agents are stretched thin, my understanding is that they're also supplementing the protection of these guys by bringing in other agencies, including by bringing in people who are not really trained to do this kind of work.
Yeah, that's always been the case, but it's exacerbated during the peak of the campaign season, and they did that. I reported on this, and now Senator Hawley has a whistleblower that's confirming my early reporting and adding some interesting details to it. But yes, they had most of the people protecting Donald Trump on July 13th at the Butler rallies where the assassination attempt occurred were Homeland Security Investigations Special Agents. And they were taken off, according to Hawley's whistleblower, off of child sex trafficking cases to go protect the Secret Service, to protect former President Trump and other protectees. And they were not trained. I reported early on that they were only given a 1 or 2 hour PowerPoint presentation to give them the skills to translate into just instantly translate into a Secret Service agent to be able to protect these the President Trump and others at these rallies, these campaign rallies.
Wow.
But what now Hawley, as whistleblower, has come forward and said that even that 1 to 2 hour webinar was so glitchy that they couldn't hear it. They couldn't hear the webinar, so they never did get really trained before the Trump-Butler rally.
Unbelievable. Okay, and then lastly, before we get to the Iranian threat to President Trump, you have a report out in the last 24 hours that despite the fact that the Secret Service is overextended, that they're bringing in all these supplemental workers, that everyone's maxed out on the amount of time that they're actually working to protect people, they're planning trips to Disney World? What's happening here?
Yes, but only if you are supportive of the LGBTQ plus workplace summit that's occurring at Disney World. Basically, the rank and file special agents and uniform division officers are flabbergasted that just yesterday they got an email agency-wide, it went out agency-wide, asking for nominations to go to the LGBTQ plus Out and Equal Workplace Summit being held at Disney World in Orlando, October 7th through 10th. So at the height of the campaign season, when so many Secret Service agents are stressed out, stretched too thin, the resources, just last week, Vince, the Secret Service and the Department of Defense announced that the military officers are going to be supplementing the Secret Service through the inauguration day, bringing up all kinds of training questions and issues, as well as optics. Why do we even have a Secret Service if we're just going to rely on the military, uniformed military people to sort of, is that something that the Secret Service wants to have representing them? Do they want uniformed members of the military to be protecting dignitaries? Is that what the look that we want as a nation? Well,
you need to bring in ringers if you're going to have people go to Trans Day at Disney World. You got to some people come in to help you. Hey, so let's talk about what Chuck Grassley released today. You've got some breaking news on this: Iranian threats to Secret Service protectees, and at the top of the list looks like Donald Trump. What are we learning?
Well, we did know about this. That was the reason. Just right after the assassination attempt, they said, "Oh no, we never denied assets that requested assets that the Trump detail requested for Donald Trump to protect him, because in fact we increased the assets for the Butler rally." Well, that was true. It's a bit of semantics, of course, because they did deny for 2 years requests for more assets for Donald Trump. But in this case, they did provide counter snipers. It was the first time they did at the Butler rally because there was this big, very tangible Iranian threat. In fact, the day before the Butler rally, the FBI arrested Asif Merchant, who is a Pakistani citizen with very deep ties to Iran. In fact, he had just been to Iran for 2 weeks, and he was on the ground in New York City trying to hire hitmen to go after Donald Trump. And now we learned from what Chuck Grassley just released today, they also could have been targeting President Joe Biden and Nikki Haley, although you have to read what Grassley released. He released what is basically the FBI write-up of their interrogation of this guy Merchant, that they arrested, and it is damning. I mean, it's so alarming what Chuck Grassley just released, the detailed accounting of the way they were assessing the security vulnerabilities at Donald Trump's rallies. It's chilling. Just read through it. I put it on my Twitter feed, on my X feed. It is, and Chuck Grassley released it to reporters. I believe it's on his website as well. I looked at the interrogation, at the FBI write-up of it, and it shows how they were assessing to this granular level how many magnometers the Secret Service was using at each rally, how many people they considered guards that were there. In fact, if you take a step back, you can say, without really going too far to conclude this, that the Secret Service lack of threat-based security assets for Donald Trump created the invitation for this assassination plot to go forward. They show there that if there were counter snipers at his rallies beforehand, you would not have it doesn't take much to conclude that this assassination plot may have not gone to the detailed steps that they took in terms of trying to hire hitmen. Thankfully, it was the FBI they were trying to hire, that this guy, Asif Merchant, was trying to hire. It was not actual mafia that you can see he was attempting to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just say, go read it's called a proffer. It's the write-up, the FBI's write-up. Chuck Grassley got a hold of it, although he said that the FBI was not being very forthcoming. And the FBI has not been very forthcoming in my questions to them as well. But yeah, it's chilling stuff.
Okay, so I'm noticing two things here, the dates. They arrested this guy on the 12th. This is the Asif Merchant, who you're talking about, the Pakistani man with ties to Iran, the one who was plotting this assassination of Donald Trump. They arrested him July 12th. That's the day before the Butler rally, as you point out on social media today. The proffer, which is where they interview the guy, it took place July 17th, 4 days after the rally. So they had this guy in custody on the 12th. Why did it take so long to interview him to ascertain this information? It feels like kind of a rush situation, doesn't it? If you have a guy in custody who's plotting to assassinate Donald Trump, don't you question him immediately ahead of a public outdoor rally?
You would think so, especially if you would think so. That's a very interesting point that you raised. I didn't even notice that. Good job on noticing the date. It's alarming. It's startling too. They are saying that there is no connection, that they can conclude as of now. The FBI is telling reporters last week, they told us, that Thomas Crooks had any foreign influence whatsoever.
Sure, but if you have someone who's plotting an assassination attempt, and as you point out in the proffer, it's a very detailed assessment of the security posture around Trump. Regardless of whether or not this guy is coordinating with a different would-be assassin, you would think that assessing the way that an assassin is constructing the scene, thinking it through, would be helpful to the Secret Service to say, whoa, there's a vulnerability here, and this guy was just about to exploit it.
Yeah, absolutely you would. I don't know why it took that days and after assassination attempt and the death of Corey Comparatore to get this information, but they did get it, and it just, to me, it just is it provides damning evidence against the Secret Service and their contention that they do everything by threat-based. Everything they do is threat-based.
Yes.
Which just completely flies in the face when they say, oh, but not for Trump because he's a former president, so he didn't get the full package, or he didn't even get a counter sniper before this event. He didn't get a counter surveillance unit, which would have roamed around the rally and encountered Thomas Crooks, especially if he's using a rangefinder. This is all.
It's absurd.
I just think that this shows exactly the vulnerabilities that the Secret Service opened up for Donald Trump, for an Iranian threat to become extremely tangible against Donald Trump. I mean, you look at the details in this proffer, it's chilling.
The Secret Service should provide, maybe they do, or maybe I've missed it, but they should provide at least a count on the number of threats they assess each year based on the target to the public. Because I don't know. I mean, right now, if I were to ask like some random Biden administration stooge, they'd be like, oh, the real threat is domestic right-wing terrorists trying to go after Biden or something like that. I just don't believe that. Trump is the single most demonized human being on the planet by the entire establishment. The idea that they would give him a weak security posture is absurd if your goal is to actually protect him and to keep him alive. I do think the public would benefit from knowing how much incoming the Secret Service and the FBI have to deal with when it comes to threats to these guys.
Oh, absolutely. And, it is obvious that they knew about this particular ASIF merchant threat in the days leading up to his arrest. So they were starting to take it very seriously. We knew about the Iranian threat against Trump and against Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, because of ever since there was a threat from Iran, ever since they decided, the Trump administration and Donald Trump himself decided to kill the top Iranian general, Soleimani, in February, what was it, January 3rd, 2020. So ever since then, we've known about this threat, but yet they're protecting different people. They were protecting Robert O'Brien, a national security advisor, after John Bolton. Bolton had an attempted assassination plot thwarted. So they've known about this threat. So why would they not give them at least a counter sniper team?
Yes.
If not 2 or 3.
It's totally dangerous. Totally dangerous.
Absolutely.
Susan, thank you for digging in on this and constantly providing new and interesting and important information. Really appreciate you as always.
Well, thanks so much for your interest in.
Always.
Take care.
Susan Crabtree with Real Clear Politics. Good to talk to her today. It's all sorts of people making predictions about what's going to happen in the election. Nate Silver. The left's really angry at him right now. He tries to analyze the polls and uses his models to try and assess what's going to happen. And in fairness to him, what he does is talks about probability of victory. So even if you say a candidate, though, 70% chance of winning, well, that means there's still a 30% chance of the other person winning, And if you were scratching off lottery tickets and you had a 30% chance of winning, you'd like your odds. 30%, that's not bad. I would like it if it were better, but 30%. So here's the latest, though, as I say that. Nate Silver's updated forecast today has President Trump now at the highest chance of winning that it's been since July 30th. President Trump has a 60.1% chance of winning the election, according to Nate Silver. Kamala Harris has a 39.7% chance. So a huge advantage at the moment for President Trump by way of the Electoral College. Similarly, they assess it based on all these battleground states. Pennsylvania, Trump, 61% chance of winning. Arizona, Trump, 73% chance of winning. North Carolina, Trump, 73%. Georgia, Trump, 65% chance. Nevada, Trump, 57% chance. Now, the 2 states where there's a tie, Michigan and Wisconsin. That's, again, this is in his model. He's assessing that there's a 50% chance that Trump or Kamala win Michigan. So anyway, always fun to look at. And the betting markets have Trump up to 53% to 46%. Right now. Does that mean that anyone should settle in and rest at home and, the election's won, no need to go out? No, nonsense. Of course not. You got to go crazy. You got to get out there. Too big to rig. What do they say? Too big to rig. Tony's in Tampa, Florida. He's calling in. He's on line 1. Hello, Tony. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Mr. Tony. All the way from Tampa. They have a good steakhouse in Tampa called Burns Steakhouse. It's like a crazy good place. It's expensive, though. They have good steaks, a big dessert room. I lived in Tampa years ago when I was just a military brat living near MacDill Air Force Base. And I say all of this as a way to buy time while we wait for Tony to answer his phone. Tony. How long was Tony on hold for? Like 8 seconds? He wasn't on hold that long, was he? Tony, this is your chance, brother. Oh, well. We missed Tony in Tampa. A great name, though. And the alliteration is great. Tony wanted to say that he thinks that should Trump win the debate next week, he will win the election. I do think the debate's a big deal. I really do. This is going to be the one spot. If you're going to get any Democrat across the country to spend any time with Donald Trump, it's going to be during the debate next week. That's it. Any independent voter, to the extent they still exist, which they do, watching this debate, it's a big deal. And has President Trump converted voters who supported the other side to him? Well, definitely. The course of the last 8 years we've seen a lot of that, actually. A lot of shifting around. So President Trump's got a big opportunity here. If he uses it well, it could very much be to his advantage next week. Let me see. I've got Dustin calling in from Winchester, line 4. Dustin, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vincenzo, how are you, sir?
I'm good, brother. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say, with regard to the military helping out the Secret Service, in my illustrious career, it was not uncommon for dignitaries to include President Obama and James Clapper to have a military police detail on the outer perimeters, including military police canines.
Right.
So why that went away, I don't know why.
Yeah,
Why
that makes sense.
Officers.
That makes sense. And we often see local police supplementing the security perimeters, no question. What's different apparently now, according to Susan Crabtree, is Secret Service agents are short-staffed, as overworked as they've ever been, and now you're slotting in other agencies' officials and giving them the quickest little PowerPoint presentation on how to be a Secret Service agent. Now go. That doesn't sound good. That sounds terrible, actually. David Strom from Hot Air joins us next.